It's your old pal, Xiovox. We're going to try changing the formula around here and make things a little bit more professional. Tonight's short story, Premium Harmony, comes out of the book The Bazaar of Bad Dreams, written by Stephen King, published November 3rd, 2015. Warning, this will contain some adult themes, foul language, and death. Viewer discretion is advised. For everyone else, please enjoy the show. They've been married for 10 years, and for a long time, everything was okay. Swell. But now they argue. Now they argue quite a lot. It's really the same argument. It has a circularity. It is, Ray sometimes thinks, like a dog track. When they argue, they're like greyhounds chasing the mechanical rabbit. You go past the same scenery time after time, but you don't see the landscape. You see the rabbit. He thinks it might be different if they had kids, but she couldn't have kids. They finally got tested, and that's what the doctor said. It was her problem, something in her. A year or so after that, he bought her a dog, a Jack Russell she named Business. Mary would spell it out for people who asked. She wanted everyone to get the joke. She loved that dog. But now they argue anyway. They're going to Walmart for grass seed. They've decided to sell the house. They can't afford to keep it. But Mary says they won't get far until they do something about the plumbing and make the lawn nice. She says the bald patches make it look shanty Irish. It's been a hot summer with no rain to speak of. Ray tells her seeds won't grow the lawn without rain, no matter how good the grass seed is. He says they should wait. Then another year goes by and we're still here, she says. We can't wait another year, Ray. We'll be bankrupts. When she talks, Biz looks at her from the place in the back seat. Sometimes he looks at Ray when Ray talks, but not always. Mostly he looks at Mary. What do you think? He says. It's going to rain, so you don't have to worry about going bankrupt. We're in it together, unless you forgot, she says. They're driving through Castle Rock now. It's pretty dead. What Ray calls the economy has disappeared from this part of Maine. The Walmart is on the other side of town, near the high school where Ray is a janitor. The Walmart has its own stoplight. People joke about that. Penny wise and a pound foolish, he says. You ever hear that one? 1,000,000 times from you. He grunts. He can see the dog in the rearview mirror, watching her. Sometimes he hates the way Biz does that. It comes to him that neither of them know what they're talking about. It's a depressing thought. And pull into the quick pick, she says. I want to get a cake ball for Tally's birthday. Tally is her brother's little girl. Ray supposes that makes her his niece. Although he's not quite sure that's right, since all of the blood is on Mary's side. They have balls at Walmart, Ray says. And everything's cheaper at Wally World. The ones at Quick Pick are purple. Purple's her favorite color. I can't be sure they'll be purple at Walmart. If there aren't, we'll stop at the Quick Pick on the way back. He feels a great weight pressing down on his head. She'll get her way. She always does things like this. Marriage is like a football game, and he's quarterbacking the underdog team. He has to pick his spots, make short passes. It'll be on the wrong side coming back, she says, as if they're caught in a torrent of city traffic instead of rolling through an almost deserted little town where most of the stores are for sale. I'll just dash in and get the ball and dash right back out. At 200 pounds, Ray thinks, your dashing days are over, honey. They're only 99 cents, she says. Don't be such a pinch penny. Don't be so pound foolish, he thinks. But what he says is, buy me a pack of smokes while you're in there. I'm out. If you quit, we'd have an extra $40 a week. He saves up and pays a friend in South Carolina to ship him a dozen cartons at a time. They're $20 a carton cheaper in South Carolina. That's a lot of money, even in this day and age. It's not like he doesn't try to economize. He has told her before, and will again. But what's the point? In one ear and out the other. Nothing to slow down what he says in the middle. I used to smoke 2 packs a day, he says. Now I smoke less than half a pack. Actually, most days he smokes more. She knows it, and Ray knows she knows it. That's marriage after a while. That weight on the head gets a little heavier. Also, he can see Biz looking at her. He feeds the damn thing, and he makes the money that pays for the food. But it's her he's looking at. And Jack Russells are supposed to be smart. He turns into the quick pick. You ought to buy them on the Indian island if you've got to have them, she says. They haven't sold tax-free smokes on the res in 10 years, he says. I told you that too. You don't listen. He pulls past the gas pumps and parks beside the store. There's no shade. The sun is directly overhead. The car's air conditioner only works a little. They are both sweating. In the back seat, Biz is panting. It makes him look like he's grinning. Well, you ought to quit, Mary says. And you ought to quit those little Debbies, he says. He doesn't want to say this. He knows how sensitive she is about her weight, but out it comes. He can't hold it back. It's a mystery. I ain't had one in a year, she says. Mary, the box is on the top shelf, a 24-pack, behind the flour. Were you snooping? She cries. A flush is rising in her cheeks, and he sees how she looked when she was beautiful. Good-looking, anyway. Everybody said she was good-looking, even his mother, who didn't like her otherwise. I was looking for the bottle opener, he says. I had a bottle of cream soda, the kind with the old-fashioned cap. Looking for the bottle opener on the top shelf of the goddamn cupboard. Go and get your ball, he says, and get me some smokes. Be a sport. Can't you wait until we get home? Can't you even wait that long? You can get the cheap ones, he says. That off-brand, premium harmony they're called. They taste like old stale cow shit, but all right. If she'll only shut up about it, it's too hot to argue. Where are you going to smoke anyway? In the car, I suppose, so I have to breathe it. I'll open the window, I always do. I'll get the ball, then I'll come back. If you feel you have to spend $4.50 to poison your lungs, you can go in. I'll sit with the baby. Ray hates it when she calls Biz the baby. He's a dog. And he may be as bright as Mary likes to boast, but he still shits outside and licks where his balls used to be. Buy a few Twinkies while you're at it, he tells her, or maybe they'll have a special on ho-hos. You're so mean, she says. She gets out of the car and slams the door. He parked too close to the concrete cube of the building, and she has to slide until she gets past the trunk of the car. He knows that she knows he's looking at her, seeing how she's so big she has to slide. He knows she thinks he parked too close to the building on purpose, to make her slide. And maybe he did. He wants a cigarette. Well, Biz, old buddy, it's just you and me. Biz lies down in the back seat and closes his eyes. He may get up on his back paws and shuffle around for a few seconds when Mary puts on a record and tells him to dance. And if she tells him in a jolly voice that he's a bad boy, he may go into the corner and sit facing the wall. But he still shits outside. The time goes by and she doesn't come out. Ray opens the glove compartment. He paws through the rat's nest of papers, looking for some cigarettes he may have forgotten. There aren't any. He does find a Hostess Snowball, still in its wrapper. He pokes at it. It's stiff as a corpse. It's got to be 1,000 years old, maybe older. Maybe it came over on the Ark. Everybody has his poison, he says. He unwraps the snowball and tosses it into the back seat. Want this, Biz? Go ahead, knock yourself out. Biz snarks the snowball in 2 bites. Then he sits to work licking up the bits of coconut off the seat. Mary would have had a shit fit, but Mary's not here. Ray looks at the gas gauge and sees it's down to half. He could turn off the motor and unroll the windows, but then he'd really bake, sitting here in the sun, waiting for her to buy a purple plastic kickball for 99 cents when he knows they could have got one for 70 cents at Walmart. Only that one might be yellow or red. Not good enough for Tally. Only purple for the princess. He sits there and Mary doesn't come back. Christ on a pony, he says. Cool air traces over his face. He thinks about turning off the engine and saving some gas, but then thinks, fuck it. She won't bring him the smokes either. Not even the cheap off-brand. This he knows. He had to make that crack about the little Debbies. He sees a young woman in the rearview mirror. She's jogging towards the car. She's even heavier than Mary. Great big tits shuffle back and forth under her blue schmuck. Biz sees her coming and starts to bark. Ray unrolls the window. Is your wife a blonde-haired woman? She puffs the words. A blonde-haired woman wearing sneakers? Her face shines with sweat. Yes, she wants a ball for her niece. Well, something's wrong with her. She fell down. She's unconscious. Mr. Ghosh says he thinks she might have had a heart attack. He called 911. You better come. Ray locks the car and follows her into the store. It's cold inside after the car. Mary's lying on the floor with her legs spread and her arms at her sides. She's next to a wire cylinder full of kickballs. The sign over the cylinder says, "Hot fun in the summertime." Her eyes are closed. She might be sleeping on the linoleum floor. 3 people are standing over her. One is a dark-skinned man in khaki pants and a white shirt. A name tag on the pocket of his shirt says Mr. Ghosh, manager. The other 2 are customers. One is an old thin man without much hair. He's in his 70s at least. The other is a fat woman. She's fatter than Mary, fatter than the girl in the blue smock. Sir, are you this lady's husband? Mr. Ghosh asks. Yes, Ray says. That doesn't seem to be enough. I sure am. I'm sorry to say, but I think she might be dead, Mr. Ghosh says. I gave her artificial respiration and mouth-to-mouth, but he shrugs. Ray thinks of the dark-skinned man putting his mouth on Mary's, Frenching her, sort of, breathing down her throat right next to the wire cylinder full of plastic kickballs. Then he kneels down. Mary, he says. Mary, like trying to wake her up after a hard night. She doesn't appear to be breathing, but you can't always tell. He puts his ear next to her mouth and hears nothing. He feels air moving on his skin, but that's probably just the air conditioning. This gentleman called 911, the fat woman says. She's holding a bag of bugles. Mary, Ray says, louder this time, but he can't quite bring himself to shout, not down on his knees while people are standing around. One of them, a dark-skinned man. He looks up and says apologetically, She never gets sick. She's healthy as a horse. You never know, says the old man. He shakes his head. She just fell down, says the young woman in the blue smock. Didn't say a word. Didn't she grab her chest, asks the fat woman with the bugles. I don't know, says the young woman. I guess not. Not that I saw. She just fell down. There's a rack of souvenir t-shirts near the kickballs. They say things like, my parents were treated like royalty in Castle Rock, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. Mr. Gorsh takes one. Would you like me to cover her face, sir? God, no, Ray says, startled. She might only be unconscious. We're not doctors. Past Mr. Gorsh, he sees 3 kids, teenagers, looking in through the window. One of them is taking pictures with his cell phone. Mr. Gorsh is looking where Ray is looking and rushes at the door, flapping his hands. You kids get out of here. You kids get out! Laughing, the teenagers shuffle backwards, then turn and jog past the gas pumps to the sidewalks. Beyond them, the nearly deserted town shimmers. A car goes by, pulsing rap. To Ray, the bass sounds like Mary's stolen heartbeat. Where's the ambulance? The old man asks. How come it's not here yet? Ray kneels by his wife while the time goes by. His back hurts and his knees hurt, but if he gets up, he'll look like a spectator. The ambulance turns out to be a Chevy Suburban, painted white with orange stripes. The red jackpot lights are flashing. Castle Country Rescue is printed across the front, only backwards, so you can read it in the rearview mirror. Ray thinks that's pretty clever. The two men who come in are dressed in white. They look like waiters. One pushes an oxygen tank on a dolly. It's a green tank with an American flag decal on it. Sorry, this one says. Just cleared an accident over in Oxford. The other one sees Mary lying on the floor, legs spread, hands at her sides. Aw, gee, he says. Ray can't believe it. Is she still alive? He asks. Is she just unconscious? If she is, you better give her oxygen or she'll have brain damage. Mr. Gorsh shakes his head. The young woman in the blue smock starts to cry. Ray wants to ask her what she's crying about. Then knows. She had made up a whole story about him from what he just said. Why, if he came back in a week or so and played his cards right, she might have tossed him a mercy fuck. Not that he would, but sees that maybe he could, if he wanted to. Mary's eyes don't react to a pen light. One EMT listens to her non-existent heartbeat, and the other one takes her non-existent blood pressure. It goes on like that for a while. The teenagers come back with some of their friends. Other people, too. Ray guesses they're drawn to the flashing red lights on top of the EMT Suburban, the way bugs are drawn to a porch light. Mr. Gorsh runs at them again, flapping his arms. They back away again. Then, when Mr. Gorsh returns to the circle around Mary and Ray, they come back and start looking again. One of the EMTs says to Ray, "She was your wife?" "Right." "Well, sir, I'm sorry to say that she's dead." "Oh." Ray stands up. His knees crack. "They told me she was, but I wasn't sure." "Mary, Mother of God, bless her soul," says the fat lady with the bugles. She crosses herself. Mr. Gorsh offers one of the EMTs the souvenir t-shirt to put over Mary's face, but the EMT shakes his head and goes outside. He tells the crowd that there's nothing to see, as if anyone's going to believe a dead woman in a quick pick isn't interesting. The EMT pulls a gurney from the back of the rescue vehicle. He does it with a sudden quick flip of the wrist. The legs fold down all by themselves. The old man with the thinning gray hair holds the door open, and the EMT pulls his rolling deathbed inside. "Ooh, hot," the EMT says, wiping his forehead. "You may want to turn away for this part, sir," the other one says, but Ray watches as they lift her onto the gurney. A sheet has been neatly folded down at the end of the gurney. They pull it up, all the way up, until it's over her face. Now Mary looks like a corpse in a movie. They roll her out into the heat. This time it's the fat woman with the bugles who holds the door open for them. The crowd has retreated to the sidewalk. There must be 36 standing in the unrelieved August sunshine. When Mary is stored, the EMT comes back. One is holding a clipboard. He asks Ray about 25 questions. Ray can answer all but the one about her age. Then he remembers that she's 3 years younger than he is and tells them 34. "We're going to take her to St. Stevie's," the EMT with the clipboard says. "You can follow us if you don't know where that is." "I know," Ray says. "What? Do you want to do an autopsy? Cut her up?" The girl in the blue smock gives a gasp. Mr. Gorsh puts his arm around her, and she puts her face against his white shirt. Ray wonders if Mr. Gorsh is fucking her. He hopes not. Not because of Mr. Gorsh's brown skin, Ray doesn't care about that, but because he's got to be twice her age. An older man can take advantage, especially when he's the boss. Well, that's not our decision, the EMT says, but probably not. She didn't die unattended. I'll say, the woman with the bugles interjects. And it's pretty clearly a heart attack. You can probably have her released to the mortuary almost immediately. Mortuary? An hour ago, they were in the car arguing. I don't have a mortuary, he says. Not a mortuary, a burial plot, nothing. Why the hell would I? She's 34. The two EMTs exchange a look. Mr. Burkett, there'll be someone to help you with that at St. Stevie's. Don't worry about it. Don't worry? What the hell? The EMT's wagon pulls off with the lights still flashing, but the siren off. The crowd on the sidewalk starts to break up. The counter girl, the old man, the fat woman, and Mr. Gorsh look at Ray as though he's someone special, a celebrity. She wanted a purple kickball for her niece, he says. She's having a birthday. She'll be 8. Her name is Tally. She was named for an actress. Mr. Gorsh takes a purple kickball from the wire rack and holds it out to Ray in both hands. One on the house, he says. Thank you, sir, Ray says. The woman with the bugles bursts into tears. Mary, Mother of God, she says. They stand around for a while, talking. Mr. Gorsh gets some sodas from the cooler. These are also on the house. They drink their sodas, and Ray tells them a few things about Mary, steering clear of arguments. He tells them how she made a quilt that took 3rd prize at the Castle County Fair. That was in '02, or maybe '03. That's so sad, the woman with the bugle says. She has opened them and shared them around. They eat and drink. My wife went in her sleep, the old man with the thinning gray hair says. She just laid down on the sofa and never woke up. We were married for 37 years. I always expected I would go first, but that's not the way God wanted it. I can still see her laying there on the sofa. He shakes his head. I couldn't believe it. Finally, Ray runs out of things to tell them, and they run out of things to tell him. Customers are coming in again. Mr. Gorsh waits on some, and the woman in the blue schmuck waits on others. Then the fat woman says she has to go. She gives Ray a kiss on the cheek before she does. You need to see to your business, Mr. Burkett, she tells him, her tone both reprimanding and flirtatious. Ray thinks she might be another mercy fuck possibility. He looks at the clock over the counter. It's the kind with the beer advertisement on it. Almost 2 hours have gone by since Mary went sliding between the car and the cinder block side of Quick Pick. And for the first time, he thinks of Biz. When he opens the door, heat rushes out at him. And when he puts his hand on the steering wheel to lean in, he pulls it back with a cry. It's gotta be 130 in there. Biz is dead on his back. His eyes are milky. His tongue is protruding from the side of his mouth. Ray can see the wink of his teeth. There are little bits of coconut caught in his whiskers. That shouldn't be funny, but it is. Not funny enough to laugh, but funny in a way that has some fancy word he can't quite think of. Biz, old buddy, he says, I'm sorry. I forgot all about you. Great sadness and amusement swept over him as he looked at the baked Jack Russell. That anything so sad should still be funny is just a crying shame. Well, you're with her now, aren't you? He says. And this thought is so sad, yet so sweet. He begins to cry. It's a hard storm. While he's crying, it comes to him now that he can smoke all he wants. And anywhere in the house. He can smoke right there at her dining room table. You're with her now, Biz, old buddy, he says through the tears. His voice is clogged and thick. It's a relief to sound just right for the situation. Poor old Mary. Poor old Biz. Damn it all. Still crying, and with a purple cake ball still tucked under his arms, he goes back into the quick pick. He tells Mr. Gorsh he forgot to get the cigarettes. He thinks that maybe Mr. Gorsh will give him a pack of premium harmonies on the house as well. But Mr. Gorsh's generosity doesn't stretch that far. Ray smokes all the way to the hospital with the windows shut and Biz in the back seat with the air conditioning on high. Howdy folks, your old pal Xiovox here. Hope tonight's story didn't tug at your heartstrings too much. If you want to help out the channel, please go ahead and leave a like or dislike to let me know how the story went. Your feedback will help me determine what works and what doesn't for future projects. Until then, I look forward to speaking to you again.